Hello my international darlings and welcome back to another video on Mary's channel, and yes, that's me. So in the last video of this series I've talked about the divorce, and if you watched it you might have noticed that this video was way longer than the usual. That's because it is by far the most polemic era of the Beatles and consequently of Mclennon too. In my view, it was a time that it became clear that John and Paul really had something, because no one would be that heartbroken just because of a friendship or band's end. Of course, people can be upset due to a lot of things, but to call it a divorce, to write that many songs attacking each other, songs which I will be talking about in the next video, and to affirm that it was the biggest heartbreak of your life, it's too dramatic for the situation. If you haven't watched my last video, I strongly recommend it so you can understand better the timeline I'm following. In this video, I will be talking about the years after the divorce, the lost weekend, and the last years of John's life. As I said in the last video, it was in 1970 when the Beatles broke up and the divorce happened. John and Paul's relationship was the most affected by it, since their constant fights and disagreements were one of the main reasons the band ended. But even after the breakup though, their relationship didn't get much better. In the beginning of the 70s, they would still attack each other during interviews and songs. The next video of this series will be about the songs, since the very beginning of the band to the most recent releases of Paul, and of course, I will include all the songs they did insulting each other during the years after the divorce. In this video though, I will not talk about that, but about other facts, information and material about the time span from 1971 to 1976. According to the book The John Lennon Letters by David Hunter, my favorite biographic book about John, by the way, in November of 1971, Paul gave an interview to Melody Maker and said that John and Yoko weren't cool. He also said that he liked the album Imagine but not the one before that because it had too much political material. When asked about his reaction on How Do You Sleep, a song John made for Paul criticizing him, Paul replied, "I think it's silly, so what if I hang up with uptight people?" Lennon wrote a long answer for that and insisted for it to be published in the same space as Paul's interview. Let's check some highlights of this letter. It's all very well playing simple, honest, all Paul in Melody Maker, but you know damn well we can't just sign a bit of paper. You say, "John won't do it. I will if you identify us against the taxman." Anyway, you know that after we have our meeting, the fucking lawyers will have to implement whatever we agree on, right? If they have some form of agreement between them before we meet, it might make it even easier. It's up to you. As we said many times, we will meet whenever you like. Just make up your mind. 2 weeks ago, I asked you on the phone, please, let's meet with our advisors and decide what we want. And I emphasized especially Mclennon, Lennon-McCartney Songwriting Company, which is mainly our concern, but you refused, right? Now, I was quite straight with you that day and you tried to shoot me down with your emotional logic. If you're not the aggressor, as you claim, who the hell took us to court and shot all over us in public? As I've said before, have you ever thought that you might possibly be wrong about something? Your concept about us and Glenn is incredible. You say you made the mistake of trying to advise them against Glenn and that pissed them off, and we secretly feel that you're right. Good God, you must know we're right about Estman. You are right about New York. I do love it. It's the only place to be. Apart from anything else, they leave you alone too. I see you prefer Scotland. I'll bet your piece of apple you will be living in New York by 1974. 2 years is the usual time it takes to you, right? So you think Imagine and political? It's working class hero with sugar on it for conservatives like yourself. You obviously didn't dig the words. Imagine you took How Do You Sleep so literally. Read my own review of the album in Crowdaddy. Your politics are very similar to Mary Whitehouse's. Saying nothing is as loud as saying something. Join the Rock Liberation Front before you get to. Wanna put your photo on the label like Uncle John and Yoko, do you? And you got no shame? If we're not cool, what does that make you? No hard feelings for you either. I know basically we want the same. And as I said on the phone and in this letter, whenever you want to meet, all you have to do is call. An interesting fact about this letter is that, according to Dave's book, 9 lines of it were cut off the published version of the magazine. That's because the lawyers were worried about libel, probably against Poe. The lines were not found until today, but we can get a clue of what it was because in the same month, Lennon sent another letter to Melody Maker and the PS were probably referred to those lines. P.S. What was libel about saying Paul was camp? For those who don't know, camp is slang to effeminate. This makes me so curious about what was in those 9 lines. I hope we can discover it someday. Still in 1971, John sent another letter, this time to Paul and Linda. It is a very angry one and it seems to be a response to another one Paul and Linda might have sent him. Let's read some parts of it. Dear Linda and Paul, I was reading your letter and wondering what middle-aged cranky Beatle fan wrote it. I resisted looking at the last page to find out. I kept thinking, who is it? Queenie, Stuart's mother? Clive Epstein's wife? Ellen Williams? What the hell, it's Linda! You really think the press are beneath me/you? Do you think that? Who do you think we/you are? The self-indulgent doesn't realize who he is hurting, bit. I hope you realized what that shit you and the rest of my kind and unselfish friends laid on Yoko and me since we've been together. It might have sometimes been a bit more subtle, or should I say middle class, but not often. We both rose above it quite a few times and forgave you too. So it's the least you can do for us, you noble people. Linda, if you don't care what I say, shut up. Let Paul write or whatever. When asked about what I thought originally concerning MBE, I told them as best as I can remember. And I do remember squirming a little. Don't you, Paul? Or do you, as I suspect, still believe it all? I will forgive Paul for encouraging the Beatles if he forgives me for the same, for being honest with me and caring too much. Fucking hell, Linda, you're not writing for a Beatle book. Finally, about not telling anyone that I left the Beatles, Paul and Clan both spent the day persuading me it was better not to say anything, asking me not to say anything because it would hurt the Beatles and let's just let it patter out, remember? So get that into your petty little perversion of a mind, Mrs. McCartney. The cunts asked me to keep quiet about it. Of course, the money angle is important to all of us, especially after all the petty shit that came from our insane family/in-laws. And God help you all, Paul. See you in 2 years. I reckon you'll be out then. All this fussing and fighting came to an end, or at least to a truce, in 1973, when John, George, and Ringo got to know that Paul was right about Alan Klein and his intentions. In the following video, you are going to see parts of an interview that John and Yoko gave to Weekend Word on April 8, 1973.
John, can you tell me what happened with Alan Klein? Why did you and the other two try to decide finally to get rid of him?
Well, there are many reasons to finally give in the push, although I don't want to go into the details of it. Let's say that possibly Paul's suspicions were right.
Still in 1973, John and Yoko broke up and he went through a phase called Lost Weekend that lasted way more than a weekend. It was more than an year actually. The Lost Weekend is also the name of a book written by Charles R. Jackson that tells a story about a man who, like the author himself, was a closeted homosexual. During this period of his life, John moved to Los Angeles and was often seen with May Pang and Harry Nilsson. Now we know that he and May Pang were dating, but some people also believed that he had something with Harry. The Lost Lennon's Interview, a book by Geoffrey and Brenda Giuliano, tells about an interview with Harry Nilsson. It is told that the question to Harry Nilsson was, "Did John miss the Beatles?" Harry answered, "Someone told me a few minutes ago that they saw John walking on the street once, wearing a button saying, 'I love Paul.' And this girl asked him, 'Why are you wearing a button that says, 'I love Paul?' John said, 'Because I love Paul.'" During the last weekend, John reconnected with many people Yoko would make him avoid, especially his friends and family like Cynthia, Julian, and of course, Paul. It was a time that John was reconsidering his choices and thinking about new possibilities. According to an interview May Pang gave to the Liverpool Echo in April 4, 2005, John would talk about it, a possible Beatles reunion with Harry Nilsson. But the main thing he talked about was that he did want to write with Paul again. He talked about it a lot. Tony King, a former Beatles publicist, gave an interview to BBC Radio in 1990 and told that John commented about writing with Paul again during the last weekend. Let's listen to it.
Once we got through Mind Games and were into Walls and Bridges, John wanted to write again with Paul. You know, because I said to him, "Do you ever want to sit down and write with Paul again?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I'd love to when the time's right." And I was sending out those feelers in the other direction. I was trying to, you know, being the Mary Poppins that I am, but I was trying to encourage that. You know, I come from the time when they were great friends, and I like the thought of them still continuing that, you know. People can beg to differ, but it doesn't mean to say you don't have to speak to each other for the rest of your lives. And no, he was considering writing with Paul again. He wanted to work with him again. He just couldn't work out the common ground at that time. It was still all that Apple stuff, you see, in the way. You know, John loved Paul, no doubt about it. I remember once he said to me, "I'm the only person who's allowed to say things like that about Paul. I don't like it when other people do." He didn't like if other people said nasty things about Paul. And he always referred to Paul as his estranged fiancée and things like that, like he did on that record. I saw her standing there with Elton on Madison Square Garden. And he knew that his relationship with Paul was very important to him. But, you know, like all great friendships, they had grown apart and married different people and had different lives. But he knew what he didn't like about Paul, but he also knew what he liked about Paul.
But John's plans to meet Paul and make music with him again got closer than ever in 1974. In the beginning of that year, he gave an interview to New Musical Express and said, "Yes, I miss Paul a lot. It's been a year since I've seen him. He came over with Linda to my place in New York. Of course I'd like to see him. He's an old friend, isn't he?" Some months later, he planned to surprise Paul in New Orleans during the recording of Venus and Mars, according to Roger Friedman's report on Fox News. May Pang told me the following story. Lennon was making plans to see Paul and Linda McCartney right before Ono pulled her string and brought him home to the Dakota in Manhattan. Paul and Linda were going to New Orleans to record the Venus and Mars album, May recalled, and John found out that they would be there. He made plans to surprise them down there. He was in a great mood and he really missed Paul. Just as Lennon was making this plan, he was also trying to quit smoking. Enter Ono. She told him that she had a method for quitting and he should come over and she'd show him. I had a feeling that this was a bad idea. She hadn't seen him in a while, and I felt something was wrong. John told me not to worry, but I did. Indeed, Pang was correct, since Lennon did not return to her. Painting no less remiss that Lennon shared his plans with Ono, who feared the reunion with the McCartneys would spur Lennon to leave her forever. Paul McCartney was, and is, Yoko Ono's prime rival and arch enemy. Case in point, when Linda McCartney died in 1998, Paul didn't invite Yoko to the memorial service in New York. He did invite May Pang, and she attended. Linda was wonderful, she said. At first, when Penn told people about Lennon's plans after he'd left her, no one believed it. But then something happened, she said. Derek Taylor, the Beatles publicist, showed me a postcard he'd gotten from John in England. It said, "Going to New Orleans to see Paul." And that was it. That was the proof. The picture you're seeing right now is the last picture of John and Paul together. Although they had seen each other some more times after this, it was taken on April 1st, 1974, during the last weekend. John was in LA producing Harry Nilsson's album Pussycats. Paul stopped by and they met for the first time in a long period. And they played together too. In the following video, you can see him talking about it.
I jammed with Paul. I did actually play with Paul, yeah. We did a lot of stuff in LA. But there was 50 other people playing too, and they're all just watching me and Paul, yeah.
When the last weekend came to its end, John gave some interviews about it to Hit Parader in 1975. He said, "I was trying to put it around that I was gay, you know? I thought that it would throw them off, dancing at all the gay clubs in Los Angeles, flirting with the boys, but it never got off the ground." The interviewer then said, "I think I've only heard that lately about Paul," to which John replied, joking or not, "Oh, I've had him. He's no good." A similar declaration of John happened during an interview to Playboy years later in 1980. He affirmed that nobody ever said anything about Paul's having a spell on me or my having one on Paul. They never thought that was abnormal in those days, 2 guys together or 4 guys together. Why didn't they ever say, how come those guys don't split up? I mean, what's going on backstage? What is Paul and John's business? How can they be together so long? Despite the interruption of John's plan to record with Paul again, they saw each other sometimes before John's death. In the book John Lennon, The New York Years by Bob Cruen, he told when Paul and his family visited John during Christmas. The Lennon's apartment had a small foyer between 2 doors. When I opened the inner door, I heard something that sounded like Christmas carols. "Don't worry," I yelled back to John and Yoko. "It's just some kids caroling." When I opened the other door, I saw it was actually Paul and Linda. They'd be singing "We Wish You a Merry Christmas." I was really surprised and said, "I think you're looking for the guys in the bedroom." As they came in, everyone was really happy to see each other. John and Yoko jumped up when Paul and Linda walked into the bedroom. They were obviously excited to see each other again. There was a lot of hugging and catching up, and we had a round of tea. I stuck around but didn't take any pictures. Of course, I do wish I had taken a few shots. It was such a unique evening. But it didn't seem the right thing to do, as I felt that would be too intrusive. I was there as a guest, a friend, not a photographer or a signman. Also, about this Christmas meeting, it is said in Howard Song's book, Fab, An Intimate Life of Paul McCartney, that they, John and Paul, seemed like giddy school chums, hugging, patting each other on the back, like high school buddies who hadn't seen each other for a long time and really liked each other. During the next years, John and Paul met each other some more times and released some apologetic songs to one another. As I said before, I'm going to talk about all the songs in the next video, but if you want to know more about the other times they met in person before John's death, I talked about it in the video which is appearing in the card right now. This video is actually about a fictional movie called Two of Us that imagines how their last encounter was. But there is some information about the actual meeting too. In 1984, Paul talked about his last phone call with John to Rolling Stone. He said, "Well, I never got to straighten things out like I would have liked to have done. But what I have to take is my consolation. And I take anything I can get as consolation. And really, the biggest consolation was that the last phone call we had together was very good. It was very warm. We talked about cats. He was talking about his cats and about his Aunt Mimi and stuff I could relate to. And we could be very friendly. And it was really very warm. So I kind of realized that, that even though we had been bitching in public and stuff, we still had an affection for each other. And I was pleased to know that. And I know Yoko later hanged me up and said, 'Look, you know he did love you.' And so, I say, you can grab anything you can get. I know he did. I know he came close to to love/hate. Any strong relationship has got that in it, I think. It is a pity. It would be nice for everything to just be wonderful, smooth all the time, but it seemed to be life, isn't it? And that's it, my international darlings. That was a long one too. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you like it, please press the thumbs up button and share with a friend you think might like it too. Subscribe to my channel to become a certified international darling. I don't know what that is, but it sounds cool, right? Anyway, my comments are always open for critics and suggestions. Just be kind. I have feelings. If you watched this video until now, please comment, "He's no good." I see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.